Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tanapano Premamritam Manidhi Dhira
Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksuram Militanyena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanyamanavistam Sabhidanyena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamaya Dilanti Swapadantikam. First of all, I offer my most humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha and Diksha Guru, Nitya Lila, Pravishta Om Vishnupad, Asatarasata Sisimad, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Then I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha and Sannyas Guru, Nitya Lila, Pravishta Om Vishnupad, Asatarasata Sisimad, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha Gurus, Srila Gaur Govinda Goswami Maharaj and Srila Bhakti-Vigyan Bharti Goswami Maharaj. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga, Srila Bhakti-Vigyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti-Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Prabhupada, and Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji and Srila Bhakti-Vinod Thakur. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the speaker of Bhagavad Gita. And I offer my humble obeisances unto Sri Arjuna, the hearer of Bhagavad Gita. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of Bhagavad Gita. And I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of the great acharyas who wrote commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, like Sripad Swami, Srila Sridhar Swamipad. I keep getting it now. Srila Sridhar Swamipad, and Sri Ramanujacharya, and Sri Madhvacharya, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and Srila Baldev Vijayabhushan, and Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, and Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I offer my obeisances to all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis who are present here today. Dandavat Pranam. Okay, so we finished the 16th chapter yesterday, the divine and demoniac qualities. We are now on the 15th question, which is the 17th chapter, first verse. This is the 15th question of the 16 questions that were enumerated by Srila Narayan Maharaj in the 54th verse of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. These are the questions that drive the narrative of the Gita. The 17th chapter, which we're about to discuss this evening, is the 5th of the 6 chapters on Jnana Yoga, which gives us information about how we are able to function within the world while we are trying to develop our Bhakti Yoga from the platform of Vaidhi Bhakti or Karma Mishra Bhakti or Gyan Mishra Bhakti or Rope Siddha Bhakti or Sangha Siddha Bhakti or whatever position we're practicing from. Okay? And now we're going to discuss chapter 17, and we're going to begin with Arjuna's question, because what has happened so far in the 13th chapter, Krishna has described about the nature of the world, Sankhya Yoga, how the world is manifested. He's talked about how Paramatma is the one who is sanctioning the living entity's desires. In that verse, he talks about it in the verse, I think it's the 23rd verse of the 13th chapter, Utkramishvara. Paramatmeti chapi yukto dehismin purushapara. Anumantacha. Upadrashta. He's the overseer. Paramatma is the overseer, Anumanta, and the permitter. Upadrashta Anumantacha. Bhartabe Maheshvara. Paramatmeti chapi yukto dehismin purushapara. So, Paramatma is the Upadrashta, the overseer, and Anumanta, the permitter of the living entity's desires. Also, at the end of the 13th chapter, we described the soul's position within the subtle body and how it spreads all over the body through consciousness. And the 14th chapter, the modes of material nature are discussed. And in the 15th chapter, we discuss the nature of how the world is a reflection of the spiritual world and how the living entities are moving through the different births, how reincarnation is functioning, how they're traversing the world. Then in the 16th chapter, we discuss the two classes of people, the divine and the demoniac. And at the end of this 16th chapter, Krishna says one should understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of Scripture. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. And the whole point of these Gyan Yoga chapters is gradual elevation while practicing Bhakti Yoga. This is the information you need to know what's good and what's not good, what's right and what's wrong. This is how he begins the 16th chapter when he's explaining about the people who are demoniac. They don't know what to do and what not to do. They don't know how to behave because there are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every entity is fallible. So in the very beginning of this chapter, the foolish persons, he explains, those persons who are, going back too far, okay. Those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness, nor proper behavior, nor truth is found in them. So, now he's saying that if you want to be gradually elevated while you're living in this world, then you have to know the rules and regulations. What is duty, what is not duty. What are the rules and regulations of Scriptures? You have to know this. And knowing this means that one has to understand it in relationship to two things. The modes of material nature. First, you have to know that, as we're going to discuss in here, that charity, for instance, which is going to be discussed in here, someone may think, well, I've given in charity. I gave to that poor man in the street, or this or that, But there's definitions of charity. There's charity in the mode of ignorance, charity in the mode of passion, charity in the mode of goodness. And then we're also going to understand what is the qualities and behavior of people in the different varnas and the different ashramas in the 18th chapter. And we're going to discuss what things they should do and they should not do. All of this is going to be discussed now in the 17th and 18th chapter. So, Krishna is telling at the end of the 16th, we need to know this. One should understand what is duty, according to Varna and Ashram. What is not duty, by the influence of the modes of material nature and by the rules and regulations of the Scriptures. And knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that they may gradually be elevated. So now he's going to tell you how to behave. Krishna explains how to behave. in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, right? All right. Arjuna uvacha ye shastra vidhim utsrijya yajante shrayan vita tesham nishta tuka Krishna sattvam aho rajastama. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the situation of one who does not follow the principles of Scripture, but worships according to his own imagination? Is he in goodness, in passion, or ignorance? So this is a very important point, because this is what people just make it up as they go along. If it feels good, do it. Like this. They have so many ideas, so many conceptions, imagination. And Srila Prabhupada is going to explain how this verse is connected to the earlier part of the Gita. In the 4th chapter, 39th verse, it is said that a person faithful to a particular type of worship gradually becomes elevated to the stage of knowledge and attains the highest perfectional stage of peace and prosperity. So, let's take a look at that. 4th chapter, 39th verse. In this world, there is nothing so sublime. A faithful man who is absorbed in transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. Okay, well, that's 439. Faithful man who is absorbed in transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. Prabhupada says in this purport that such knowledge and Krishna consciousness can be achieved by a faithful person who believes firmly in Krishna. One is called a faithful man who thinks that simply by acting in Krishna consciousness he can attain the highest perfection. This faith is attained by the discharge of devotional service and by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, which cleanses one's heart of all material dirt. Over and above this, one should control the senses. A person who is faithful in Krishna consciousness and who controls the senses can easily attain perfection in the knowledge of Krishna consciousness without delay. So Prabhupada says in the 4th chapter, 39th verse, it is said that a person faithful to a particular type of worship gradually becomes elevated to the stage of knowledge and attains the highest perfectional stage of peace and prosperity. In the 16th chapter, it is concluded that one who does not follow the principles laid down in the scriptures is called an asura, a demon, and one who follows the scriptural injunctions faithfully is called a deva, or a demigod. Now, if one with faith follows some rules which are not mentioned in the scriptural injunctions, what is his position? This is Arjuna's question. This doubt of Arjuna is to be cleared by Krishna. Are those who create some sort of God by selecting a human being and placing their faith in him, worshipping in goodness, passion, or ignorance? Which mode? Do such persons attain the perfectional stage of life? Is it possible for them to be situated in real knowledge and elevate themselves to the highest perfectional stage? Do those who do not follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures, but who have faith in something and worship gods and demigods and men attain success in their effort? Arjuna is putting these questions to Krishna. So here Prabhupada lays out the details, how he expands on the question, so that it becomes clear to everyone. And now, Krishna is going to respond. Sri Bhagavan Nuvacha Trividha Bhavati Shraddha Dehinam Sa Svabhavaja Satviki Rajasi Chaiva Tamasi Chetitam Shrinu. The Supreme Lord said, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of three kinds: goodness, passion, or ignorance. Now, hear about these from me. Now Krishna is going to explain it. According to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living being is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. So, faith is based on the modes of nature that you acquire. Acquire certain modes of nature, and then you develop a certain kind of faith. It's the influence of the modes of nature that drive your faith, what kind of faith you have. Men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods. Those in the mode of passion worship the demons. And those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. So in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead describes different kinds of worshipers according to their external activities. According to scriptural injunctions, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipable. But those who are not very conversant with or faithful to the scriptural injunctions worship different objects according to their specific situations in the modes of material nature. Those who are situated in goodness generally worship the demigods. The demigods include Brahma, Shiva, and others such as Indra, Chandra, and Surya, the sun god. There are various demigods. Those in goodness worship a particular demigod for a particular purpose. Similarly, those who are in the mode of passion worship the demons. Now you'll notice how this verse that Krishna is explaining also refers back to what he says earlier in the Gita, where he says, those who worship the demigods, I give them faith. So because of the mode of nature stimulating them to have a certain faith, then the mode of nature influences them, and then they develop the faith based on the mode of nature. So I give them faith, Krishna says, when they worship the demigods. Why? Because he wants them to worship something outside of themselves. Now, it says those in the mode of passion worship the demons. Now, Prabhupada makes this point. Prabhupada is recalling, that during the Second World War, a man in Calcutta worshipped Hitler because, thanks to that war, he had amassed a large fortune of wealth by dealing in the black market. Similarly, those in the modes of passion and ignorance generally select a powerful man to be God. They think that anyone can be worshipped as God and that the same results will be obtained. So oftentimes in India, certain men claim to be God. It happens. And these persons claim that they're God or an avatar, an incarnation of God. But according to their behavior, they're betrayed. This one man was saying that he was an incarnation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was not really an ordinary person at all. When he was 16, he knew all of Jiva Goswami's 6 Sandarbhas plus all the other Goswami literature by memory. And he was able to expound on it and lecture on it for days at a time. So he was considered some very special personality. But all the worship goes to your head if you don't have proper guidance from a sadhu. And so because he didn't have that kind of guidance, and because he was very proud of his prowess and his ability and his knowledge, then he eventually became a very world-famous guru. And while he was a world-famous guru, he was, even though he was married and had a family, he was always having dalliances with women all over the world. This was his thing. And he would tell people, I'm Mahaprabhu, that means I'm Krishna. Because I'm Krishna, I like to enjoy with my gopis. Just all complete speculation, nonsense. But people worshipped him. People worshipped him. Also, there was another one in South India who said that he was God. And one time, a great magician named P.C. Sakar went to see this person. His name is Sai Baba. This was in 1978 or 79. P.C. Sakar was a siddha. He had done yoga and austerities and sacrifices, and he used to be able to, he had cities, he had mystic cities, and his magic was real. He did a magic trick one time. Srila Gurudev, Narayan Maharaj, tells the story about how P.C. Sakar, he was supposed to speak and do magic at a very big event. There were many, many important persons there, foreigners and everybody. So he was supposed to speak at 4 or 5 o'clock, whatever it was either 4 or 5. So he comes in, they're waiting, it's 5:15, 5:30, 5:45, 6 o'clock, and then he walks in. So they're all looking at him. He's an hour late. So they're very upset. So he says, why is everyone so upset? You told me to be here at 5 o'clock. Look at your watch. It's 5 o'clock. And everybody's watch, although they had been looking at the watch, go to 6 o'clock. And all the watches became 5 o'clock. So this was the power of P.C. Sakar. He was a very great magician. So Sakar, he went down to see Sai Baba, and he dressed like a peasant from a village so that he couldn't be recognized. And then he went up to see Sai Baba after the sermon, and he said to him, could you please give me some prashadam, something I could take back to my village to give people. So Sai Baba was like this, and he gets a sweet bowl, and he gives it to Sakar, and he says, here, you take this. Oh, thank you so much. And then he goes, and here's one for you. And he makes one. So then Sai Baba started making many things, and whatever Sai Baba could make by his magic, P.C. Sakar could also make. So like this they were doing. So then Sai Baba got very upset. He said, oh, you're just a magician. He said, yes, I know I'm a magician. And that's what I tell people. I'm a magician. But you lie. You tell people that you're God, but you're nothing more than a magician. It was in all the newspapers in India. He had exposed him. So this happens. They worship these persons. Why they worship the person in the mode of passion? It's about money and power and influence and good fortune in their business. They want to be able to worship someone, and they give some donation, and then their own fortune and their own power and their own influence increases. So this is Rajagun. Then it is clearly described here that those who are in the mode of passion worship and create such gods. And those who are in the mode of ignorance and darkness worship dead spirits. Sometimes people worship at the tomb of some dead man. Sexual service is also considered to be in the mode of darkness. Similarly, in remote villages in India, there are worshippers of ghosts. Sometimes these people, they do, who are worship tantrics, and they do worship of different deities, like Durga in her form where she kills Mahishasura, a very horrible form, and other forms. So they worship like this, and sometimes they have women that they use for sexual services and rituals and religious rituals. So Prabhupada is pointing out this is also considered tamagun. This is not spiritual. I've seen here in America, now they're starting to do Tantra, and they talk about it in the Tantric, because some of them yogi, people who do yoga, they've come to me and said, oh, but they have these tantric sex rituals. Isn't this also religion? No, this is not religion. This is not religion. This is all bogus. So Prabhupada is pointing out sexual service also considered to be mode of darkness. These different kinds of worship are not actually God worship. God worship is for persons who are transcendentally situated in pure goodness. In the Srimad Bhagavatam it is said, Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. When a man is situated in pure goodness, he worships Vasudeva. The purport is that those who are completely purified of the material modes of nature and who are transcendentally situated can worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Then we have the next. Those who undergo severe austerities and penances not recommended in the scriptures, performing them out of pride, egotism, lust, and attachment, who are impelled by passion and who torture their bodily organs, as well as the supersoul dwelling within, are to be known as demons. So, there are some people who fast for political purposes. So here, Krishna is saying, if they undergo these penances and austerities not recommended in the scripture, performing out of pride, egotism, lust, and attachment, and who are impelled by passion, and who torture their bodily organs as well as the supersoul dwelling within, they're demons. These people who fast for political purposes, that I'm going to fast till the death unless you let me out of jail or leave my country or do this or do that. This is not recommended in Scripture. Fasting is to be done on the holy days. Janamastami, Ekadasi, Vishnu Tattva holy days, Gaur Purnima. On these days, we fast. This is recommended fasting. Or Chaturmas, during the 4 months of the raining season, you can eat one meal a day and spend the rest of the time doing bhajan. So, like this, there are rules. Rules. So we follow this. This is recommended in Shastra. These are the austerities that are recommended in the Shastra, not false austerities. I've seen at the Kumbh Mela people who do all kinds of strange austerities. People who, one man, he grew his nails for 40 years. And his nails were like this, walking around with these nails. And there was other man who stands on one leg the whole time. He never gets off of him, so you see he's standing there. He's leaning and he has something he leans on and he ties the other leg up to the side, so he's not, you see the leg, all the veins are popping out, you know, he's been standing on that leg for 20 years. And I actually saw one guy who had his head in the sand. How they do these things, you know. And they think, oh, these are austerities, but these are not recommended by Shastra. These are not recommended. not acceptable. We follow what's recommended in Scripture. Even food, of which all partake, is of three kinds, according to the three modes of material nature. The same is true of sacrifices, austerities, and charity. Listen, and I shall tell you the distinction of these. So now Krishna is going to explain the distinctions, what qualities constitute food in the mode of goodness, what qualities constitute food in the mode of passion, what qualities constitute food in the mode of ignorance. Now, let's explain. Foods in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life, purify one's existence, and give strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. Such nourishing foods are sweet, juicy, fattening, and palatable. Foods that are too bitter, or too sour, or too salty, or too pungent, too dry, and too hot are liked by people in the modes of passion. Such foods cause pain, distress, and disease. Food cooked more than 3 hours before being eaten, which is tasteless, stale, putrid, decomposed, and unclean, is food liked by people in the mode of ignorance, like school cafeteria food. You've ever, right? School cafeteria food. I got this pile of of flesh that's sitting there. It's been cooked since 8 o'clock in the morning. Now it's noon. It's 4 hours old. It stinks like hell. So, yes. Prabhupada now tells a few things here we should read. The purpose of food is to increase the duration of life, purify the mind, and aid bodily strength. That is its only purpose. In the past, great authorities selected those foods that best aid health and increase life's duration, such as milk products, sugar, rice, wheat, fruits, and vegetables. These foods are very dear to those in the mode of goodness. Some other foods, such as baked corn and molasses, while not very palatable in themselves, can be made pleasant when mixed with milk or other foods. This is an interesting quote and shows how Prabhupada is very pliable. In India, when Prabhupada was there, they had corn in India, and the only corn they had in India before, back in Prabhupada's time, was like the stuff that they hang on the door on Halloween, you know, that weird, hard, tasteless corn, you know. So that's why he said, not very palatable by itself. So one day here in America, after Prabhupada was here, they gave him a big ear of Georgia sweet corn. And he ate that, and he said, "Oh, this can be offered to Krishna." This is very good. You have such corn in America. So Prabhupada was amendable, you know. All these foods are pure by nature. They are quite distinct from untouchable things like meat and liquor. Fatty foods, as mentioned in the 8th verse, have no connection with animal fat obtained by slaughter. Animal fat is available in the form of milk, which is the most wonderful of all foods. Milk, butter, cheese, and similar products give animal fat in a form that rules out any need for killing of innocent creatures. It is only through brute mentality that this killing goes on. The civilized method of obtaining needed fat is by milk. Slaughter is the way of subhumans. Protein is amply available through split peas, dal, whole wheat, etc. So this is very interesting. There's a lot of important points that need to be made here. about all of this. There's different kinds of milk. And the cows in India with the hump, the Brahmin cows, they produce what's called A2 milk. Now in America, there are some cows that produce A2 milk and there's others that don't. But because they mix all the milks together at a dairy, you don't really get pure A2 milk. So that's one thing. The A2 milk is the milk that really helps to nourish the brain tissue. Second, in Vedic culture, the cow is not exploited like it's done here in America. The way, or in the Western world, anywhere in the world where they have these dairy farms, they hook the animals up to machines, they keep them in very uncomfortable situations, and when they're no longer useful, they slaughter them and earn whatever money they can by selling the carcass. But in India, it's very different. And I remember when I was a young brahmachari, I used to go to the house of this one man named Mr. Agarwal. And he was a very educated man. He had gone to the university, he had gotten a degree in English literature, and he had done his thesis on one poet, Yeats, the poet Yeats. He had done his thesis on poet Yeats. He was very fond of Yeats' poetry. So he had a property of about an acre, his house and land in the back, maybe half an acre. And he had the great-grandmother, the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter, 4 generations. And his kids would come home from school every day, and they'd wash the cows and brush them. And they took care of them. They were the pets. The cows were the pets in the house. No cats, no dogs, cows. And they washed and took care of the cows, bathed the cows, nourished the cows. And I saw one day, because he had land outside of that in fields. And in the fields he used to grow different types of grass. And I saw when the bullock cart came one day to the house, and in the back they had all these grasses, and they were of different hues and colors. And so I asked him, I said, oh, I give this grass to this cow, and that milk I use to make yogurt. And then I give this grass to this cow, and that milk I use to make butter. And then I give this to this cow, and I make cheese. And he was explaining, and this cow makes just milk that we drink, and the different grasses nourish the milk to come out in a certain way so that it's more useful for a particular. And then I remembered reading it in Krishna book, that there was different colored grasses, reddish hue, dark green, light green, bluish hue of grass. And that Nanda Maharaj used to feed the different cows different kinds of grass. So then I understood that he was following a very ancient system from the time of Nanda Maharaj. Very ancient system. So this is, when we talk about dairy in terms of the Vedic culture, the cows are part of the family. It's not like you have a dairy farm where the cows are being exploited. They're part of the family, and they're loved, and they're cared for, and they're nourished, and they're not abused, and they're not hurt, and they very happily give milk without any difficulty or anxiety. They're happy to give milk. And those who are true cow herders would not separate the baby calf from the mother. They'd allow the baby calf to be there, in the first week or two when the milk is coming out with the colostrum in it, then they would only let the baby calf drink that milk, and they have all these rules and principles that they follow very, very strictly. And so very, very different from what we have in America and the Western world in terms of dairy farming. Okay, this is not what is done in ancient India. In ancient India, and even today, where they have goshalas, and then the cows are protected. The cows are protected. The cows are not slaughtered. In most of the states of India now, with the exception of Kerala and Bengal, cow slaughter is forbidden. Completely forbidden. Not allowed. And even in Nepal, they passed a law. There's no cow slaughter. So generally, in that area of the world, they give proper care and respect to the cows. So this is very different. So when the people argue, oh, you shouldn't accept dairy, dairy is this and dairy is that. Also, he talks here about wheat, and there's this whole thing about gluten and the effects of gluten. But what they're finding is that even the European wheat, the durum whole wheat, which has never been hybridized, there's three things. There's heirloom, there's hybridization, and then there is GMOs. Three different things. So an heirloom seed means that the vegetable or the fruit or the grain or whatever it is, like you'll see sometimes in the store, they have heirloom tomatoes. So heirloom tomato means that they never hybridize the seed. What is hybridization? Hybridization means that they'll take a seed from one tomato and they'll take a seed from another tomato. So one tomato grows quicker and the other tomato is very hardy. It resists cold better. So they crossbreed the two seeds and they try to get a tomato that grows quick but resists cold. So this is a little manipulation that they make between seeds, but it's not a GMO. GMO is something very different. GMO means that they manufacture something, like they take a gene from an Arctic fish that doesn't freeze, and then they put that gene inside the seed of the tomato so that the tomato won't freeze. So this is GMO. Or they make a pesticide and they put a minute amount of that pesticide in the corn seed so that the insect that eats the corn, his stomach explodes. So if you eat the GMO corn, then you'll get stomach irritation. A lot of people complain about getting stomach irritation after eating 2 or 3 ears of GMO corn because it's got pesticide in it. So we eat organic because organic, all the states that have organic laws say that being organic means being non-GMO. Being non-GMO. So, therefore, we have to understand that when they're talking about this wheat, the wheat in India, when Prabhupada is saying we eat wheat, whole wheat, that this is mode of goodness, he's talking about wheat that's heirloom wheat from India, that's never been hybridized or GMO. In America, they've hybridized the wheat so many times. Okay, this wheat gives a good yield, and this wheat grows very fast, and this wheat's more resistant to cold. So they kept hybridizing until they got a wheat that would grow fast with a bigger yield and be resistant to cold. So they could put 2 crops in at one time every season. And what was the result? Every time they hybridized for this purpose, they reduced the nutritional content. And they created something that no longer resembled the original wheat and therefore was dangerous for our health. So the gluten that comes from that wheat in America is different from the gluten that we get in the wheat in India, which is an heirloom wheat, which has never been hybridized, or from other things like farro, which is an heirloom grain from Italy, or spelt, which is an heirloom grain from Germany, or kamut, which is an heirloom grain, I think, from Germany or the Netherlands. And those are like wheat. They have a very similar einkorn, another German heirloom grain. Never been hybridized, not affected by GMO. All of those have gluten, but people don't seem to suffer the same effects from eating those. It's really more than just the gluten. It's got to do with the hybridization, the recreation of the nature of the plant, and other things that go on in making it. So here, Srila Prabhupada, when he's talking about dairy, when he's talking about whole wheat, he's talking about things from a perspective in India where the cows are very lovingly cared for and the wheat comes from heirloom seeds that have not been hybridized and are very healthy for you. Foods in the mode of passion, which are bitter, too salty, too hot, or overly mixed with red pepper, cause misery by producing mucus in the stomach, leading to disease. Foods in the mode of ignorance or darkness are essentially those that are not fresh. Any food cooked more than 3 hours before it is eaten, except prasadam, food offered to the Lord, is considered to be in the mode of darkness, because they are decomposing. Such foods give a bad odor, which often attracts people in this mode of ignorance, but repulses those in the mode of goodness. Remnants of food may be eaten only when they are part of a meal that was first offered to the Supreme Lord or first eaten by saintly persons, especially the spiritual master. And we find this tradition of eating the remnants of food from the spiritual teacher, even in the Jewish religion, the Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox Jews. They have spiritual teachers called tzaddiks, and the tzaddik will recite the prayers in Hebrew, and the congregation will respond. It's a kind of kirtan. And the tzaddik will also, when he eats a meal, he will leave remnants, and they will take the remnants of the tzaddik's meal. Also, they wear these hair called payas on the sides, curls, very similar to our choti that we wear in the back, the sikha. And they have a white strings that they wear around their waist that they recite prayers on, like our Brahmin thread. So, very similar. There's one website called equalsouls.org. It's established by my godbrother, Isha Das. And in this website, equalsouls.org, he shows all of the areas of equality between the ancient Hebraic religion and the ancient Hindu religion. And there was a very important rabbi in Israel who, when reading this, agreed that the ancient Hebrew religion and the ancient Hindu religion are actually the same religion based on these quotations which he brought about from the Old Testament and the Torah, from the Torah, etc. So we can see that this goes on in other religious traditions as well. We eat the communion of the host, which is in Christianity, which is offered to Christ, body and blood of Jesus, and then we eat the host. Otherwise, food which is not offered, the remnants of food are considered to be in the mode of darkness. One should not eat food in the mode of darkness. But we should not eat the remnants of somebody else's food. Only the remnants of the Supreme Lord and the spiritual master. Tell you a funny story. When I first joined, they used to have the Sunday feast, and they would make a plate for the public, the guests who came to the feast. They would make a plate for them like we were hungry. They were hungry brahmacharis. And so they'd give them this big plate, and they couldn't eat it all. They'd eat half of it and leave some. So then Prabhupada had told us that prasadam is Krishna. It's not different from Krishna. We have to eat prasadam. You can't waste any prasadam, not even a grain of rice. So what we would do is after the Sunday feast, we'd collect all the uneaten plates, unfinished plates, and put it in a big tub, and then on Monday morning we'd eat it for breakfast, because it's prasadam. So one Hindu gentleman was visiting the temple one day, and they were giving him this, and he said, "This is not to be eaten. We're not supposed to be eating the remnants." "No, it's prasadam. You don't understand. You're just a Hindu. You're not a devotee." So this gentleman could understand that we were new with this, and we didn't know what was going on. And so he wrote a letter to Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada wrote a letter back to the temple. You're not supposed to eat the remnants of the guests at the Sunday feast. He said, and you're not, if the problem is that you're putting too much in the plate, then don't put so much in the plate. Put a small amount in the plate, let them eat it, and when they finish it, then you give them seconds. But don't put so much in the plate that there's remnants, and then you have to throw it out, and never are you supposed to eat that. It's not edible. So that ended that. But what was interesting was that our faith in Prabhupada was so complete that although we had misunderstood what he meant when he said it, we followed it to the letter, because Prabhupada said it. So now he says, the food in the mode of darkness, such foodstuffs, although very palatable to persons in the mode of darkness, are neither liked nor even touched by those in the mode of goodness. The best food is the remnant of what has been offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord says that he accepts preparations of vegetables, flour, and milk when offered with devotion. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhakta prayachati. Of course, devotion and love are the chief things which the Supreme Personality of Godhead accepts. But it is also mentioned that the prasadam should be prepared in a particular way. Any food prepared by the injunction of the scripture offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be taken even if prepared long, long ago, because such food is transcendental. Therefore, to make food antiseptic, edible, and palatable for all persons, one should offer food to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when you Krishnaize the food, when you spiritualize it by offering it to Krishna, now it doesn't carry the qualities of the modes of nature. So the mode of ignorance will not enter into the food because it's not food anymore. It's the remnants of Krishna's prasadam. And so therefore they're transcendental, they're spiritual, and they're beneficial to eat, even if they're very old. There is rice in Jagannath Puri, you've seen. They take the rice and then they dry it, and it becomes hard and dry, little crunchy, dry pieces of rice. And people carry it around with them for years, and they eat to break the Ekadasi or to break the Vishnu Tattva Ekadasi fast. The next morning on the Dwadasi or the day after the Vishnu Tattva fast, they eat 1 or 2 grains of this Jagannath Puri rice because it's always transcendental, it's always spiritual. So these are some things we should understand and we should know about prasadam and about foodstuffs in general. Now he's going to talk about sacrifices. Of sacrifices, that sacrifice performed according to duty and to scriptural rules, and with no expectation of reward, is of the nature of goodness. But a sacrifice performed for some material end or benefit, or performed ostentatiously out of pride, is of the nature of passion, O chief of Bard. And that sacrifice performed in defiance of scriptural injunctions, in which no spiritual food is distributed, no hymns are chanted, and no remunerations are made to the priest, and which is faithless. That sacrifice is of the nature of ignorance. Understand? So, we've seen in the pastimes, in the Bhagavatam, that this one person, he wanted to become very powerful, so he started performing a fire sacrifice where he was cutting off pieces of his flesh and throwing it in the fire and offering it to Lord Shiva. The Lord Shiva came and appeared before him and he said, okay, stop this. I don't want you to cut your flesh and offer it in the fire. This is not acceptable, not necessary. So he said, I want one boon. Okay, I'll give you a boon. You sure? Yes. Whatever boon I want, you'll give me? Yes, I'll give you. Okay. I want you to give me a boon that when I touch somebody's head, it explodes. So Lord Shiva says, this you want? This boon? Because he's in the mode of ignorance. So in the mode of ignorance, they want to do things that are horrible. They don't want to do anything useful. He could have asked for any boon to do good to people. But no, because he's cutting off his flesh and throwing it in the fire, he wants a boon that he can blow people's heads up. So Shiva says, okay, I promised you, all right, you can touch somebody's head and their head will blow up. So then the demon who got this boon, he started chasing Lord Shiva. I'm going to blow up your head. So this is the nature of these people in the mode of ignorance. So then Vishnu came, dressed as a young brahmachari, and he called the demon by the name. He said, you're the son of so-and-so. So then he said, you must know my father. How do you know my father? Oh, he's my good friend. He said, why are you running so hard? Your body will get tired. You should take care of your body. Because he knows that demons are very concerned about their body. He said, you should take care of your body. You should rest. Sit down here a minute. Have a glass of water. Relax. So then he rests. He's relaxing. So he said, so why are you running? He said, Lord Shiva gave me a boon. What boon did he give you? He gave me a boon that if I touch somebody's head, it'll blow up. Oh, really? Lord Shiva gave you this boon? Yeah. So I'm chasing Lord Shiva. I'm going to touch his head and blow it up. Oh, I see. So then he says to him, I'm curious. Do you think Lord Shiva is reliable, that he could make such a boon? He could give you such a blessing? So he said, well, isn't he one of the devas? Yes, but, Lord Shiva, he puts ashes on his body. He lives with the ghosts. He may say anything. I personally, as a friend of your father, I don't think that this is true. I don't think this is true at all. Well, how can I know? He said, I'm sure it's not true. Just touch your head and you'll see it's not true. So he touches his head and it blows up and this way. Krishna saves Lord Shiva. Now he talks about austerities. The austerity of the body consists in this: worship of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmins, the spiritual master, and superiors like the father and mother. Cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and nonviolence are also austerities of the body. So this is austerity of the body. Real austerity of the body means to do this: worship Krishna, to worship the Brahmins, worship the spiritual master, and the superiors like the father and mother, and to be clean and simple and celibate and nonviolent. Very important, nonviolent. And that also means not just physically, but verbally. And that's what he's going to say here. Austerity of speech consists of speaking truthfully and beneficially, and in avoiding speech that offends. One should also recite the Vedas regularly. So one should not criticize. One should not condemn or criticize or speak words which are hurtful to other people. That's also part of nonviolence. Prabhupada says in the purport, one should not speak in such a way to agitate the minds of others. Of course, sometimes when a teacher speaks, he can speak the truth for the purpose of instructing his students. But such a teacher should not speak to others who are not his students if he will agitate their minds. This is penance as far as talking is concerned. Besides that, one should not talk nonsense. When speaking in spiritual circles, one's statements must be upheld by Scripture. Then he says, and serenity, Krishna says, serenity, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purity of thought are austerities of the mind. The mind should be serene, peaceful. This threefold austerity practiced by men whose aim is not to benefit themselves materially, but to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is of the nature of goodness. Those ostentatious penances and austerities, which are performed in order to gain respect, honor, and reverence, are said to be in the mode of passion. They are neither stable nor permanent. Like at the Kumbh Mela, when I saw these people standing on one leg or sticking their head in the ground or growing long nails or whatever they were doing, there was all kinds of strange tortures to their body. And then people would come by, there's great austerity, so they would give money. So this is how he was making a living. Making a living by growing his nails or standing on one leg or whatever it was that they were doing. So this is just ostentatious. Penance and austerity are expected to attract people and receive honor, respect, and worship from others. The people would come at the Kumbh Mela and they would worship these people. They put flowers, they put money, they'd offer incense because they think, there must be a great person that they can do this. And those penances and austerities which are performed foolishly by the means of obstinate self-torture or to destroy or injure others are said to be in the mode of ignorance, like this pastime that I just told about the person who wanted to blow up people's heads, and also Hiranyakashipu, who stood on his toes for 100 years until the ants ate his whole body, and he kept his soul, his consciousness, floating in his bones. There was nothing left, just his bones. He was keeping his life airs in the bones. So like this type of austerity, this type of penance, this is in the mode of ignorance. This is not good. That gift which is given out of duty at the proper time and place to a worthy person and without expectation of return is considered to be charity in the mode of goodness. In the Vedic literature, charity is given to a person engaged in spiritual activities as recommended. There is no recommendation for giving charity indiscriminately. Spiritual perfection is always a consideration. So there are different, as I talked about yesterday or in a former class, there are different rites of passage in life. So there's a birth, there's a marriage, different ceremonies are performed, initiation, etc. So whenever such a ceremony is performed, then Brahmins and Vaishnavas should be invited to the home. You should cook prasadam, offer it to Krishna, and feed them prasadam. Then you should give them some cloths, then you should give them a donation. All you want is that they should bless the child or the couple or whoever it is, that they should get spiritual life, Krishna consciousness, that's all. Prabhupada talks about how his father used to invite sadhus to the home. And then he would feed the sadhus, he would wash their feet, he would do service to them. And they would ask them, "You please bless my son that he become a servant of Radharani." Like this. They used to do this and ask for blessings for Prabhupada that he becomes a servant of Radharani. So this is the thing that we do. Not anything for material benefit for ourselves, but only for the benefit of spiritual life. But charity performed with the expectation of some return or with the desire for fruit of results or in a grudging mood is said to be charity in the mode of passion. So charity in the mode of passion, this is charity which is done like you see the picture of the man with the big check. I gave X amount of dollars, I gave in charity, now you please take this charity. And then he gets his name in the newspaper, he gets his picture in the newspaper, and people start buying his shoes or his whatever it is that he's selling because he's done this charity. So this is all passion, all passion. Charity performed at an improper place and time and given to an unworthy person without respect and without contempt and with contempt, without respect and with contempt, is charity in the mode of ignorance. So contributions for indulgence and intoxication and gambling are not encouraged. If you give money to some drunken person so you can buy beer, this is not good. From the beginning of creation, the three syllables, Om Tat Sat, have been used to indicate the supreme absolute truth, Brahman. They were uttered by the Brahmins while chanting Vedic hymns and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. And now Prabhupada starts to sum this up a little bit. It has been explained that penance, sacrifice, charity, and foods are divided into three categories: the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. But whether first class, second class, or third class, they are all conditioned, contaminated by the modes of nature. When they are aimed at the Supreme, Om Tat Sat, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Eternal, they become means for spiritual elevation. So here Prabhupada is pointing out that we're not so much concerned about doing things in goodness for any other purpose except that's what pleases Krishna. We behave in goodness, we offer foods in goodness, we do austerities in goodness, we do penances in goodness, we do sacrifices in goodness. Why? Because those sacrifices are meant to be offered to Krishna. This is Krishna consciousness. This is what Prabhupada is emphasizing in his translation and explanation of the Gita. And in fact, this is what Krishna is saying. Because in the next verse, he says, thus the transcendentalists undertake sacrifices, charities, and penances, beginning always with Om, to attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the perfection. They do this to attain Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan realization. One should perform sacrifice, penance, and charity with the word Tat. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from the material entanglement. What material entanglement? The entanglement of the modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. The absolute truth is the objective of devotional service, and it is indicated by the word Sat. These works of sacrifice, of penance, and of charity, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme Person, O son of Pritha. But sacrifices and austerities and charities performed without faith in the Supreme are non-permanent. O Arjuna, regardless of whatever rites are performed, they are called asat and are useless, both in this life and the next. So when anything is done, sacrifice, austerity, charity, without proper faith according to the rules and regulations of Scripture, then it is asat, it is impermanent. And those done in relation to the rules and regulations of Scripture are meant for promoting devotional service, because they're done in the mode of goodness, and from the mode of goodness, then you'll elevate yourself to the transcendental mode of pure goodness. So, the recommendation of the 17th chapter is that as you live your life and try to practice bhakti yoga, Vaidhi bhakti, or karma mishra, or jnana mishra, or whatever it is that you're doing, you try to perform all your activities as a sacrifice for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, in the mode of goodness, and you don't invent anything, you follow the rules and regulations of Scripture, and you do everything in that consciousness, and then gradually you'll elevate yourself in spiritual life, and you will make advancement in Krishna consciousness. This is all these chapters, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, are all guiding us to this one principle. That understand how the world works, understand how it's a reflection of the spiritual world, understand how you're supposed to engage yourself in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to transcend the modes of material nature, which are influencing you to keep taking birth in this material world. So this is the practical advice for those who are on the path of Vaidhi Bhakti or Karma Mishra Bhakti or Jnana Mishra Bhakti. Here's how you apply all these things so you make progress in your spiritual life toward attaining pure Krishna consciousness. Now, tomorrow and the next tomorrow, we'll do the first part of the 18th chapter, and then the next day, the next part, and then that will be concluded. Okay? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama